He hit me so hard I saw stars, and his friends just laughed. That's when I knew this wasn't just his crime. It was theirs too. It started with a surprise. My boyfriend had planned a birthday party for me. At first, I smiled and tried to act excited. Balloons, music, cake. It all looked perfect on the outside. But something didn't feel right. Most of the people there were his friends, not mine. I barely knew some of them. I kept looking around, hoping to see a familiar face, but none of my close friends were invited. I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe he just wanted me to feel special. Maybe this was his way of showing love. But still, deep inside, I felt like a guest at my own party. As the evening went on, I noticed something strange. The way he held my hand in front of people felt like a performance, like he was acting for an audience. Every time someone looked at us, he'd smile wider, hug me tighter, but when no one was watching, that warmth disappeared. It was like he had two faces, one for the world, and one just for me. People laughed and talked loudly. Drinks were passed around. I stood there, pretending to enjoy, but I could feel it in the air. This wasn't really about me. It felt more like a show he was putting on to prove something. I didn't feel celebrated. I felt watched, judged, out of place. There was something sharp behind their smiles, something cold in their eyes. The jokes they cracked weren't funny. Some felt like they were meant to sting, but they were careful to make it sound casual. I started to wonder if I was imagining it all. He walked over to me, handed me a drink, and kissed my cheek. People clapped and cheered like it was some grand moment. I wanted to enjoy it. I wanted to believe he did this for me. But when I looked at him, really looked, I saw nothing behind his smile. No love, just control. That scared me more than anything. I tried to push away the thoughts, to focus on the good. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was just part of some act. A piece in a game I didn't understand yet. And as the music grew louder and the night stretched on, a quiet voice in my head whispered that something was coming. Something I wouldn't forget. I didn't know what it was yet, but I could feel it in my bones. This party wasn't the beginning of a celebration. It was the beginning of something else entirely. Something darker. The music was pulsing louder now, and the air had changed. Not completely, but just enough for me to feel it. I stood in the same room, but I didn't feel the same anymore. The laughter around me started to carry a different tone, sharper, mean. One guy leaned in and said something about how I always had to be right. Another joked that I must be exhausting to argue with. I let out a nervous laugh, but it caught in my throat. Their words weren't meant to be funny. They were meant to poke. I started to notice things I hadn't seen before. The way they looked at me when I spoke. How some of them shared a glance before laughing. These weren't friendly jokes. These were quiet attacks hidden behind smiles. It was like I had stepped into a room full of people who had already made up their minds about me. And the worst part, they were all his people. I moved around, hoping to reset the mood, but it followed me. One of the girls made a joke about how I always needed to have control. Another nodded and said I probably planned my own surprise party. They all laughed, like that was the funniest thing they'd heard all night. I laughed too, but only to keep from showing how much it stung. I felt like I was being tested, pushed, like they were waiting to see how much I could take before I snapped. He stayed close, but not once did he defend me. He just laughed with them like nothing was wrong. That's when I realized this wasn't just playful teasing. This was something else. Something I wasn't supposed to fight back against. It was their way of reminding me I was in their space, not mine. Every word, every comment felt like it had been planned. Not in a big, dramatic way, but quietly, like they all just knew the role they were playing. And I was the joke they'd chosen for the night. My smile faded slowly, and I stood there, still and quiet, while they kept laughing. But inside, something was starting to wake up. Not fear, not sadness. Just a question. Why are they doing this? And somewhere underneath that, a warning. They're not done yet. Someone suggested we play a game. I didn't want to. Not with the way the room felt. But they pushed, said it would be fun. Trivia they chose. My favorite. I hesitated. He looked at me and said, "Come on, don't be boring." So I sat down and nodded. Let's get it over with. The questions started simple. Music, movies, random facts. I answered a few. Then a few more. The others started getting quiet, only throwing glances at each other when I got things right. I wasn't trying to show off. I was just answering what I knew. But each time I scored a point, the tension grew. The laughs became forced. The smiles tighter. It wasn't a party anymore. It was a competition I hadn't signed up for. I won. Barely. But still I won. The room clapped, but it wasn't real. It felt off. Like they were clapping because they had to. Not because they meant it. I looked at him. No smile. No good job. He didn't even look at me. His jaw was locked, and his eyes didn't meet mine. I felt like I had done something wrong, like I had just embarrassed him. Then the comment came. One of his friends leaned back and laughed. "Damn, bro, you're gonna let her show you up like that?" It echoed through the room, louder than the music. The others laughed with him, but it wasn't playful. It was mocking, directed at both of us. Him for losing, me for winning. I looked at him again. Still no smile. Just that same cold face. Like I had crossed some invisible line by simply being good at something. He didn't say anything back to his friend. Didn't defend me. Didn't laugh it off. He just sat there, breathing through his nose like he was holding something. The mood dropped even lower. No one dared to start another game. No one asked me how I knew the answers. It was like I had committed a crime just by playing well. The same people who were pushing me to join in were now annoyed that I didn't play weak. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about fun. This was about control. They didn't want me to enjoy myself. They wanted me to stay in my place, quiet, smiling, agreeable. I had done the one thing that broke the script. I stood out, and they hated it. It happened so fast, I didn't even have time to react. 1 second I was standing there, heart still racing from the tension of the game, and the next, his hand connected with my face. The sound echoed through the room, cutting through the music like a crack of thunder. My cheek burned instantly, but the real pain wasn't physical. It was the silence that followed. For 1 second, just one, everything stopped. Eyes turned, mouths hung open, and then laughter. Not from strangers. Not from enemies. From people I'd shared drinks with, people who just sang happy birthday an hour earlier. The same ones who toasted with me, danced beside me, clapped during that fake celebration. They were now laughing. At me. At what he did. Like it was all part of the evening's entertainment. I looked at each of them, hoping, begging, for someone to look away. To seem uncomfortable. To say something. But their faces said it all. This wasn't a shock to them. It wasn't even new. It was just part of the night. One friend even pulled out their phone. Not to call for help. To record. To capture the moment like it was some twisted highlight of the evening. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because I was frozen. Shock doesn't feel like fear. It feels like stillness. My mind screamed, but my body didn't move. I kept telling myself this couldn't be happening. Not in front of everyone. Not like this. But it was. And they were watching. I turned to him. His eyes didn't look sorry. They looked proud. Like he wanted them to see it. Like the whole thing was staged. A warning. A message. This is how I keep her in line. And they received it loud and clear. Someone laughed louder than the others, muttering something like, "Guess she needed that." That was the final break. I realized right then, I was alone in that room. I could have screamed, fallen, collapsed. And still, no one would have stopped him. In fact, I think some of them would have clapped again. That moment changed everything. Not because I'd been hit, but because of what followed. The approval. The silence. The way everyone chose him, even when he crossed a line they all saw. That's when it stopped being about a slap. It became something bigger. Something uglier. Something I couldn't ignore anymore. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I just picked up my bag and walked out. Past the music, past the people still laughing, past the smell of beer and cheap perfume. My legs felt steady, but something inside me was crumbling. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see his face or theirs. The night air hit me like a wave, cold, sharp, and full of noise that wasn't laughter. For the first time in hours, I could breathe. I didn't know where I was going. I just walked, block after block. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. I needed silence. Not words. Not fake apologies. Just space. Eventually, curiosity got the best of me. I stopped under a streetlight and pulled out my phone. One message. No words. Just a video. The video. The moment he hit me. Sent by one of his friends. With a laughing emoji. I stared at it for a long time. Not crying. Just numb. I watched the moment again, and this time, I wasn't shocked. I saw every detail. How the room watched, how he didn't hesitate, how not one person moved to stop him. They recorded it like a joke. A memory worth saving. A victory. I felt sick, but I didn't cry. Not yet. Crying felt too small for what I felt. This wasn't heartbreak. This was betrayal from every direction. A group of people looked at me and didn't see a human. Just a punchline. Something they could share, laugh about, and forget. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my bed, phone in hand, replaying the moment in my mind. Not because I wanted to, but because it wouldn't leave me. I kept thinking, why didn't I run? Why did they laugh? But the questions didn't help. They just made the silence louder. Then something shifted. Not rage. Not sadness. Just a quiet kind of clarity. I had proof. A face. A hand. A room full of witnesses. And a video. They gave me everything I needed. I didn't ask for revenge. But I wouldn't stay silent either. So I made a decision. Not just to speak, but to make sure every laugh, every shared video, every smirk would cost them something. Because if they thought I was just going to walk away and disappear, they were wrong. This wasn't over. It was just starting. The next morning, I walked into the police station with my hoodie pulled low and my phone in my hand. The bruise on my cheek had deepened overnight, purple and angry. It throbbed with every heartbeat, but the real pain was still deeper, the kind that settles in your chest and stays. I stepped up to the desk, my voice flat. I need to report an assault. They took me to a small room. Sterile, cold, and quiet. The kind of room where truths sit heavy in the air. I handed over my phone. The officer looked at the video, silent. He didn't pause it. He didn't ask questions right away. He just watched. My face. The slap. The laughter. The way I stood there, stunned. When the screen went black, he looked up and nodded. You've got more than enough. He asked for names. Dates. Relationships. I gave them everything. His name, his friends, the location, the time. I even named the one who sent the video, with the emoji that stung more than the hit itself. This wasn't about one man losing his temper. It was a group performance. And I wasn't going to let the rest hide in the shadows. The officer started taking notes. He asked if I was sure I wanted to press charges. I said yes, without hesitation. Not just against him, but against everyone who stood by, everyone who laughed, recorded, and shared. They made me a joke. Now, I'd make them an example. He told me they'd open a case and assign an investigator. He mentioned evidence preservation, the legal process, timeline. I nodded, but my mind was already ahead. I wasn't thinking about courtrooms yet. I was thinking about accountability. I was thinking about how no one in that room expected consequences. They thought I'd disappear, cry quietly, blame myself. But that video changed everything. It wasn't just proof. It was power. It held their laughter, their cruelty, their faces, all frozen in time. They gave it to me like a trophy, not realizing it was their own noose. As I left the station, I felt the weight start to lift. Not fully. Not yet. But for the first time, I wasn't carrying it alone. The system had seen what they did. And now, they'd feel what it's like when silence turns into action. This wasn't revenge. It was justice, slow, heavy, and coming straight for them. The moment I stepped out of the police station, I knew one thing clearly. This wasn't just about punishment. It was about exposure. Every single one of them had turned my pain into entertainment, and I wasn't going to let them slide behind the excuse of, we were just watching. Watching is one thing. Sharing, laughing, mocking. Those are choices. I found a lawyer the very next day. She was calm, serious, and sharp-eyed. I told her everything, from the party, to the slap, to the message with the laughing emoji. I showed her the video. She didn't flinch. She just said, we'll need everything. The raw file, any texts, social media links. Let's track this. So we started pulling records. My lawyer filed for subpoenas. We accessed phone logs, group chat messages, even deleted content from cloud backups. What we found made my stomach twist. The video wasn't just sent to a few people. It had been forwarded over a dozen times, reposted in group chats with captions like "alpha move" or "put her in her place." Some of them took screenshots and added emojis or filters. One even put it on a meme page for a few hours before taking it down. But the damage was done. My name had been mentioned, not just in messages, but in joke comments. They knew who I was. This wasn't anonymous. I wasn't some random face on the internet. I was her. And they were proud of what they'd done. That wasn't just passive cruelty. It was active participation. They turned my assault into content. My lawyer was quiet while reviewing it all. Then she looked up and said, "This isn't just assault. It's defamation. Distribution of private content without consent. Emotional harm. We're going after all of them." And we did. Legal letters were drafted. Names were listed. Subpoenas were sent to phone companies and social media platforms. Some of his friends went quiet. Others tried to delete messages. One even texted me a half-hearted apology, claiming it was just a joke that got out of hand. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my lawyer. The most unexpected thing? One of them cracked. He handed over full screenshots of their private group chats. They had been mocking me for weeks before the party, planning how to humble me, talking about how I acted too smart. It wasn't spontaneous. It was premeditated humiliation. That changed everything. Now it wasn't just about justice. It was about truth. About showing that what happened to me wasn't a bad moment. It was a coordinated hit, hidden behind birthday balloons and fake smile. And with every piece of evidence we found, I felt a little less powerless. They thought I'd forget. They thought I'd disappear. But they were wrong. They left fingerprints on everything. And now I was going to use every single one. Once the subpoenas landed, the cracks started showing fast. At first, it was silence, no replies, no reactions. But within a few days, the panic set in. Some of them started deleting old social media posts. Others tried locking down their accounts or changing numbers. But it was already too late. The system was watching. We had names, timestamps, screenshots, and one of them broke faster than the rest. He sent my lawyer a long message. No apology, just fear. He handed over chat logs, video threads, and private messages from their group chat. It was all there. Every joke, every meme, every smug comment about how she won't do anything, or it's just a slap. They mocked me before, during, and after the party. They planned the whole setup like it was some game. That single leak gave us more than enough to file a civil suit. Once the lawsuit notices went out, the fallout hit hard. Universities were contacted. Some of them had scholarships, sports programs, academic grants. That ended fast. Schools don't like being tied to viral abuse cases. One lost his internship. Another was dropped from his company's training program. Emails were sent. Screenshots were shared. This wasn't just a courtroom fight anymore. It was a reputation collapse. One of them called me from a new number. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail crying, saying it wasn't meant to go this far, that he didn't mean to hurt anyone. But where was that energy when he recorded me getting slapped and laughed? Where was the regret when they turned my face into a meme? Their panic turned public. A few posted vague stories about losing everything over one mistake, or how cancel culture ruins lives. But it wasn't just one mistake. It was a chain of choices. A long list of moments where they could have done the right thing and didn't. They didn't just witness cruelty. They joined it, celebrated it, and shared it. And now, they were scrambling. Friends dropped them. Families found out. One of them even tried to get ahead by going on social media and apologizing publicly. Too little, too late. People saw through it. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry they got caught. Meanwhile, I kept quiet. I didn't post. I didn't respond. I let the truth speak for itself. The evidence did the talking. The damage they caused had a cost, and now every one of them was paying it. They laughed at my pain. But the real joke, they recorded their own downfall. All I had to do was press play. Court felt cold, not just in temperature but in the way everyone looked at me. I sat straight, hands tight in my lap, trying not to shake. When they called my name to testify, I stood slowly, every step toward the stand feeling heavier than the last. I had played the video 1,000 times in my head, but nothing could prepare me for what it would feel like to watch it in front of strangers, lawyers, and a judge. When the video played, the room fell completely still. The laughter from that night sounded louder in the courtroom than it ever did in the party. My voice didn't crack. I made sure of that. I answered every question clearly. I spoke of the build-up, the slap, the silence that followed, and the decision I made that night to not let it slide. Their lawyer tried to twist it. He asked if maybe I was exaggerating, if I provoked the situation, if I misunderstood the tone of the jokes. But the moment the video paused on my face, just after the slap, just before the laughter, no one had anything more to say. Even the defense attorney looked shaken. There was no way to defend what was clearly abuse, followed by cruelty. Then came the chat screenshots. Messages read aloud that made people shift in their seats. One of the jurors looked physically sick. It wasn't just about the slap anymore. It was about the group plan, the messages about putting her in her place, the laughing emoji over my bruised face, the memes, the posts, the total lack of empathy. The judge didn't need long. The verdict came faster than anyone expected. My ex-boyfriend, guilty of assault. His friends, guilty of defamation, distribution of private media, and emotional harm. Each count carried weight. Not just legal consequences, but a message. By standing by, mocking, sharing, and participating, they became part of the violence. I walked out of that courtroom lighter than I had felt in months. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I had stood up, told my truth, and made sure none of them could hide behind silence again. And for the first time since that night, I felt free. As I stepped out of the courtroom, the sun felt warmer than it had in a long time. The air didn't taste like fear anymore. It tasted like freedom. I didn't rush. I didn't hide my face. I walked like someone who had earned the right to be seen. Because I had. I had stood alone against a group of people who thought they could break me. And I didn't just survive. I made them answer for it. People always say healing is quiet, slow, invisible. But this was loud. This was justice. I had taken their laughter, their mockery, their so-called joke, and flipped it on them. They laughed at my pain, shared it, turned it into entertainment. And now, that same laughter haunted them. Not in memes or group chats, but in court transcripts and criminal records. I didn't just win a case. I exposed a culture. A group of boys who thought harming someone made them powerful. A boyfriend who thought control meant love. And a room full of people who believed silence was safety. They were wrong. And now they know it. The emails from the court kept coming, updating me on the consequences. Fines. Community service. Some of them might never get into a decent school again. Others would carry that criminal label into every job interview. And all of them? They'd remember my face. Not as the girl they embarrassed, but as the woman who stood up and didn't flinch. Birthdays used to hurt. That one night played over and over again like a scar that wouldn't fade. But not anymore. Now, every year, I remember the girl who walked into the night, heartbroken but head high. I remember the video, the noise, the silence, and then the fire that followed. And most of all, I remember the shift, the moment I stopped asking why and started asking, what now? What now is this? I speak, I walk strong, and I never let anyone shrink me again. because I didn't just get justice. I got my voice back. So laugh at me once, and maybe I'll cry. But laugh at me again, and I'll burn the whole lie down. And this time, the only sound left is yours, choking on regret. Do you think they deserved everything that happened to them in court? Or do you think I went too far? Let me know in the comments. I want to know what you really think. And if you're into real stories that hit hard, don't forget to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you don't miss the next one.